how did you come to the point of being ready to have another child, and how did that go for you?
So I, through therapy, realized that I was scared of having another baby, but I wanted another baby. And I didn't want fear to be the reason I made the decision to not have a baby. As you said earlier, like I had always wanted 3 children. And so I decided I'm just going to give it a whirl. And again, I was really fortunate because I got pregnant right away. And I wonder if that had not happened, if it had been harder to get pregnant, maybe I would have, I don't know.
How hard would
I
you
don't
have
know.
tried, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. Would have been like, I guess this isn't going to happen. I cannot imagine that I would have pursued IVF, for instance. I think I probably would have been like, enough is enough. But who knows? It didn't happen to me. I met through my neighborhood. My daughter made friends with my midwife's niece at the pool in our town.
Oh,
And
small town.
really small town. And my husband was like, hey, you really need to meet this person. I think she would be great. And she works in a blended like OB midwifery practice.
Was your other first birth also a midwife or a blended
Yes.
type of practice?
Yes,
But this
it's a
is
blended
separate
practice.
practice that you
Separate
okay.
practice and better trained clinicians. And
Same hospital?
different hospital.
Okay.
Different hospital. And we just we ran into each other one time walking down the street. We went to the same yoga class. Like she's in my community, which is amazing because she got to see me as more than a patient. And I got to see her more than
Can't
midwife
ask for
or
anything
more
better
a
than
clinician.
that. Yeah.
No, you can't. And then I started to see her and she was just speaking of being able to be present with somebody's experience, right? She just like really heard about what happened. She listened to me and not defensively and not like trying to fix it.
Had you started writing your book yet?
No, I hadn't. I had started writing about this stuff, but not writing this yet. And then she did this amazing thing, which is that she made sure the schedulers put me with her anytime I made an appointment, with the exception I had to see like an MFM because I was over 35. And that really mattered because then I didn't have to keep explaining what happened. So like if you've had a
to
birth
a new
trauma, the last thing
person every time. Yes.
every time, like, oh my God, what happened? Oh my God, what happened? Like, do I have to keep telling you this story? It's in my notes. Can you just like read the note? You know, if you're here just to like check my fundal height or whatever, you know what I mean?
But I'm so glad. Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say,
No,
I'm
go
so
ahead.
glad that you brought that up because I do think that that is important for somebody who's listening to this, if they did have something like that, to ask for that same provider so that they don't have to keep reopening up the wound, and how important that will be in your second experience or your third experience to make it a different outcome. And that is essential for how you're going to process that entire pregnancy leading up into the birth as well.
100%. And also not every provider is trained in trauma-oriented care, or what is it, trauma-informed care, right? Which asks not what happened to you, or not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And so having to like say this again and again and again, not everyone is, you're not going to click with everybody. And not everybody's going to sort of understand how to work with somebody with birth trauma. So absolutely, I really, really appreciated that. And it gave me a chance also to build a relationship with her, which I really needed to have trust in the person who was taking care of me. And then COVID happened, which is, you know, you both know how fun that was.
What
right?
month
So
was
pregnant.
your son, the second?
My son, yeah, he was born in the end of June
Okay.
2020.
We're July.
So-
We're July babies. We're all in this together.
Oh my goodness. Can you believe it?
No.
No. Actually not. When I think back on it, I think that's
You
where
just
I'm just
do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I like have blocked out I don't remember parts of being pregnant during that, you know.
Same.
same.
So at least you had already established prior to COVID with this
Yeah.
provider who you were comfortable with. Were you feeling less anxious than maybe you thought you would be once you
by
found
the second
her?
trimester, I was feeling less anxious. I just really trusted her.
That is so
And
important.
so
It's
important.
Just,
It's
it makes
so important.
every bit of difference.
Yeah.
And even just thinking back to all the questions of, did you need a C-section? Did you not? And why did they do it? When you have really good trust in your provider and you know deep down that they are
In your
making
gut.
the decisions that are right for you, so many of these asking questions, it doesn't matter. Even for me, even as someone who fully understands, I mean, not an obstetrician, but I understand a lot of obstetrics, like I didn't need to know every little thing, what was going on during my births, more than any other patient would have. But because I trusted my provider so much, I didn't have to. Do you know what I mean? Like it just,
Yes.
you just go into it feeling so different.
Yeah.
And I really think the outcomes are just so much better when we feel that way.
Completely.
Okay, so it's COVID. You found this
It's COVID.
provider, and did you have a different doula? Did you go the doula route
I
this
did
time?
not have a doula.
Okay.
I only had my husband. Similarly, I had prodromal labor, and I'm like, I guess that's just how my body gets ready for labor. And went to the hospital, got on the monitor. My midwife was there. She was like, I'm a little concerned about your son's heart rate. I was like 4 centimeters dilated. And I was like, oh my God, it's going to be the same thing all over again. I was pretty upset. And my contractions had stopped. Then she came back maybe a half hour later and she was like, I think he was just sleeping. He looks fine. And I was like, can I go home? And it was 1:00 in the morning. And she was like, you can go home. And we left, which I think is probably the most daring thing I've like ever done, is to leave 1:00 in the morning, come home without a baby. And then a couple days later, right on my due date, went into labor, same thing, in the middle of the night, called my midwife. I had an appointment to see her that morning. And I went in and I had a headache and I had high blood pressure. So they think that maybe I was developing preeclampsia. And I was at a 6 at that point. And she was like, dilated to a 6. And she was like, listen, no matter what happens, you're going to go straight to the hospital, right? And also like, it's not going to be like on Saturday night, right? Like you're now with these numbers, now with the headache, now at a 6. And, we're talking about trust. Like I trusted her, right? Like this, yeah, this is the real deal. Like no matter what, you're going to be coming home with a baby.
Right.
One way or
the
another.
time.
This is it. And so, went in, had the epidural. First, I wasn't going to have one. I was like, I'm going to have an epidural.
Yeah.
Had really seriously intense back labor, but not as bad as the last time because I had the rest. Fantastic epidural. It was like, I was comfortable, but
So
I
it's not
wasn't
you.
dead. No.
Yeah. Coming from an anesthesiologist is not
it's
you.
not.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I could like send like a bouquet of flowers to the
Like good
anesthesiologist.
epidurals. Nothing
They did
better.
a great job. When they did different things, and I didn't have in my first labor, like moving me to the side, using the peanut ball to open my hips. And then the most beautiful thing was, my midwife wasn't on call and she just came into the hospital after her office hours were done and she was with me. And I was totally like, I was like, what? You're here?
Yeah.
It was the biggest gift. I mean, I just saw her on Mother's Day and I was like, I totally owe you for my motherhood. And at first it looked like I would need a C-section because when I came to pushing, it just wasn't happening. And at that point, by the way, I think they turned off the epidural and I could feel what I was doing. And like, that was painful. And also thinking of our earlier conversation, like that was okay, right? Like I could
And
tolerate
it's a
that
different
pain
kinds of pain because it's
completely.
you're like working through it and it has like a purpose. And because my
Yes.
epidural actually wasn't great for my VBAC and it wasn't fun I had the sacral sparing where my whole, like maybe the top of my belly was good, but my whole vagina area,
It's not.
could feel everything. But I don't know, it's just a different, I don't look at that pain experience the way I do looking at my post-surgical pain. And I don't have a good pain
100%.
tolerance, but yeah.
Yes, 100%. And also it's pain, I think with the pushing, I felt like it was almost instructive. It was like, this is working, right? Like
Right.
this is like getting to the goal of getting your baby out.
Yeah.
And it's giving you important information and they could tell me push, whatever. And then she was like, can I move his head? My water hadn't broken. And I was like, okay. And she couldn't. And then she asked the OB who was attending, who I really liked, and he was able to. And then my son just kinda shut out.
Nice.
It's amazing. And it was just such a, I'm glad I had a VBAC. It's what I wanted. But most importantly, I was just treated like people listened to me the whole time and heard me and heard my concerns. And I should say, after I had the epidural, my blood pressure went really, really low. And I remember saying, like, I feel like I'm going to pass out. And the nurse immediately called the doctor to come in. And it was like that kind, it wasn't like, oh, honey, you're fine. And then we'll wait until we see
Right. You felt
blood
like they were
pressure.
being responsive and listening to you
Exactly.
and hearing what was going on. So even when something doesn't go exactly right, we understand that not everything is going to go exactly right, but that
Yes.
response and that feeling of safety that
Yeah.
they listened to me right away, they came in, they addressed the situation, must make you feel so much better.
Oh, psychological safety is so important, right? And it
Yeah.
was the same thing, like after the baby was born, I felt really, really weak. And the OB was like, okay, we'll do some blood work to see if you're anemic. But, he was like, go like this with your hand. I'm going to do the like quick and dirty assessment. I think you're not.
Right. And here are
but
all
we'll
the
keep
things
you
we're doing
here.
to check. We're looking
Exactly.
at you.
Yeah.
Then we're going to draw
Exactly.
a lab. Then we'll tell you what the lab says.
Exactly.
You knew what was happening. What was the next step in the
Yeah.
process? What were they
Exactly.
doing to address it? So important.
And he wasn't like, oh, you're just tired because you just had a baby. And he was like, I
Right.
think you're shot, right? That's what he said. I think you're shot. You put it all in and I hear you and this is what we're going to do, which is like, I felt so seen and cared for and safe, even as parts of it didn't go as I had planned.
So some people who have a traumatic C-section, they sometimes consider having a planned C-section. Was it always like you definitely wanted a VBAC? Was there any part of you that was considering a planned C-section for your second?
Yeah, I mean, I was scared of VBAC, like the potential things going wrong. I
Emergent
was scared
C-section
about
again,
that.
right?
Yeah, wouldn't that be worse, right? Than just like going in for a planned section. And I actually, my midwife was like, you can change your mind, and
Yes.
she was like, you can change your mind. I can still take care of you, even if you decide that you want to plan to have a C-section. And that was really important to me. So it took the pressure off. But
You can always change your mind.
Yeah. You can always change
I was
right?
thinking that when I was in my VBAC, I think one of the reasons that it was, I don't like to use the word successful, but the reason why it worked out was I told myself, I can always change my minds. From the minute I walk into the hospital in labor, I can say, I'm going to go set up for a spinal and get a C-section right now. The second I start feeling like scared or worried or I don't want to wait till the last minute, you can change your mind at any point. Always. Either way, same with planned C-section, and then your water breaks, and then you feel in your body that you want to try for the VBAC. I mean, assuming that it's whatever, all the rules have been met, that you are being supported in that choice. You don't have to make some choice at some point in your pregnancy that can't ever change like through the course of your birth and your labor. Did you have any pushback as far as the VBAC option? Were they fully supportive? The hospital, the midwives, did anyone?
Oh, that's a good question. It was really pretty supported, but when COVID first started in the middle there, it was like, no, nobody would be allowed to attempt a VBAC. You have to do a scheduled section and you have to do it alone, right? Because,
Yes, that
right?
couple weeks of absolute insanity, chaos.
Yes.
I have a friend who had a C-section alone during that like 1 week window in New York City.
So unfair.
But yes,
unbelievable. Yeah. No, I have a friend who also she was induced. She even worked at that hospital. She's a neurologist.
Of course.
And they were like, hey, this is coming down the pike, get induced now, have your wife come in with you. And then they kicked her wife out, like, because of induction. And it was like, she's already here. If we have COVID, we've both brought it.
So she didn't work there.
The
It's like,
rationale.
pretend I'm at work.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
But that was crazy times.
Crazy
you know?
times. So that was really just, I think, not about VBAC per se, but about like
Because
the chaos.
just to bring up VBAC, because it is amazing that there are still places that just don't allow VBAC. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we are seeing places that are now allowing VBAC after 2 C-sections, which wasn't a thing as far as I know when I started my training like 8 years ago. And so there's still people who are really stuck in the past. And then some people that are pushing the envelope a little bit further. But I don't know. It's nice to hear different perspectives. People live in all different places, what it was like for you. So they obviously they do the VBACs essentially. I mean, besides COVID
they do
issue.
them there, but I've also heard, I think the data that I just saw from Leapfrog, they just had a report that just came out that said 4 out of 5 hospitals offer VBAC. But I think that I would guess that number is actually not accurate. My guess would be that it's
How
not
do they even
as-
know?
I mean, you can call and ask, but I
Yeah.
mean, does that actually mean that
Is that
really
real?
have that choice?
Yeah, exactly.
That is a huge issue. And I think as these, especially like rural obstetric units close, it's going to become even harder for people who want a VBAC to be able to access it without driving a long distance. And that's just scary. I mean, it's scary even if you're not VBAC.
Right, exactly.
Right, to be
There's
2 hours from
a
the
lot,
hospital.
a lot of issues with
Like-
that. That's a whole nother topic.
I was just kidding. That's a
Oh my
topic
gosh.
that we will probably at some point have to get into.
Should we talk about your book for a minute?
Yes,
Sure.
please. You asked.
Okay. I learned so much. And I've talked about your book on the podcast
Thank you.
before, especially just the history. We think about
Yes.
stigma a lot, but it's all intertwined, right? So the history of C-sections is so fascinating. And sometimes when Bethany and I talk about these things, she's like, did you not learn that? And I'm like, no. This was not one of the things that was taught in my education. How did you go about researching for your book? How did you figure all this stuff out? Because it's actually not that easy,
To get all the
easily
information, yeah.
accessible.
And can
you
I
know?
also add to her question and ask why it was so important for you to understand the history of C-sections?
So I'll say the first question, why was it important, is like I really thought a lot about what would have happened to me and my baby if I had
Mm.
lived at a time where there were new C-sections. What would have happened? And I wanted to know, and nobody could like actually tell me that, right? But I wanted to know what happened to women. And so that was part of it. And also because I'm really interested in how the past shapes the present in general, like I always have been. It feels like we live at a time where it's like everything is so present. Like, oh my God, like swipe, 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 swipe. Instacart, Amazon, blah, 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 blah. But so much of our reality is shaped by things that happened to people 50, 75, 100 years ago or more. So that's why I was interested in it. And in terms of doing the research, I mean, there were a couple of books that were really important that helped me to learn the outlines of what happened in the past and how C-sections developed. Jacqueline Wolfe is a professor, I think, at Ohio State, and she has this great book called Cesarean Section, History of Risk, Technology, something else. That was really important. And then medical bondage, which the writer is Deirdre Cooper Owens or Owens Cooper. It's really important about the history of enslaved women and the development of obstetrics. Those were very, very important books for me to learn. And then, I like old stuff. So I read a lot of the old, and by old, I mean from like 1870s on literature, like medical literature. And there's crazy stuff in there.
Crazy stuff.
Crazy stuff. The New York, what is it? It's like the Library of Medicine in New York that is on Fifth Avenue and like 100th Street. They have this amazing library that's open to anybody. You just have to make an appointment. And they have books from like the 1600s that you can look through very carefully.
You were sending Jen
which is
and I on a
amazing.
field trip into the city. I can see her
Oh.
getting excited about wanting to
It's
go and check out
amazing.
this library.
It's amazing. And the librarian there was super helpful. So I just sort of followed it. And I spent some time, I mean, oh my God, there's some things I spent all this time researching and they're nowhere in the book, right? Because it's like, this just doesn't fit ultimately. I think the thing that's super interesting to me is, and maybe this partly is like getting older, is like, okay, so now C-sections in the United States, 1 out of 3 births, right? But this is so new, like in the history of reproduction.
Right. In the scheme of things, yes.
In the scheme of things. Yeah. And that's like, wow, right? Kind of mind blowing if you just think about that. Just, 50 years ago, it was like about 1 out of 1 out of 20 births, like 5%. But 100 years ago, people were still it wasn't even necessarily part of common practice, which explains why also there's so much more we don't know about C-sections, all of the holes in the knowledge.
And people weren't thinking about the experience of the woman having C-sections because it was a medical event. If this happens to you, sorry, basically. But at this point, when 1 out of 3, finally, we're starting to look at, this is still a birth, and what actually can we do to improve the experiences for these women? It's a little bit hopeful, I think, where we're moving in a good direction. When you look back at history, people say, oh, back in the olden days, things were so great. Yes and no, right? Because like to some extent, just thinking, I don't think you touched on this in the book, but the history of anesthesia, of OB anesthesia, where we would drug women who were having vaginal births without their consent. No one really talks about that piece of it. And then we finally developed epidurals and asked people, do you want an epidural or not? The history is very fascinating, and it's all rooted in really society's treatment of women is what it toils down to.
Yes.
And this is the mission, right? That we have to really change how we're treating women, especially since so many of us are now the healthcare providers taking care of each other. Was there anything in particular that was the most surprising to you, or was it all just kind of shocking? Because I could see it either way.
Yeah. Some of it was shocking, but I think what was really surprising was the way that C-sections were intertwined with sterilization. I just was surprised by that. And so just in terms of like, older techniques, the uterus would be removed totally. And you could say like, that's terrible. But on the other hand, it was at that time really dangerous for women, right? So it was potentially life-saving, right? There's no birth control, right? Yeah. Like, let's make sure this doesn't happen again, because people having C-sections at that time were the ones where like, you are either going to die or your baby will certainly die because you cannot birth vaginally. And then later on, it was like, okay, the people who'd be more likely to have a C-section would then be sterilized because they were considered unfit mothers. And that part was surprising. And then just tracing that in terms of like how C-sections are still associated with having fewer children, not because we're being sterilized, but that there's all kinds of reasons for that. So that was really, I was surprised that history flowed as well as it, like that thread, you know what I mean? Like
It makes sense why,
persists.
why we
Yeah.
still have these thoughts in the back of our minds that we're associating such negativity and the shame and the stigma, all of that kind of wrapped up. When you look at the history, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It
And
does.
probably why our parents and our grandparents looked at it so differently as well. And they almost weren't able to support us because they had these beliefs that were very strongly intertwined in them, and they didn't see the other side of it.
Yeah, and that are still in society. I mean, like I put on social media the other day, there's this form that I had to fill out for my son to go to the eye doctor. And it was like, the options were like natural,
I saw that.
cesarean. And it's like,
Why does that
we're
matter?
still- first of all, I mean, it's an eye doctor.
No, but it's a
Okay.
doctor. You're a doctor. Don't use those words. You know,
Well,
like
and
no
it's
excuse.
like, just say vaginal,
Vaginal.
cesarean.
It's a vagina.
You know?
It's a C-section.
Yeah.
What's
Just say it.
natural? Like,
Yeah.
was it organic too? Like,
Exactly. And then also it's like, what's natural? Is it natural if you're induced? Is it natural if you're IVF? Like what is
IVF.
meaningless? Is meaningless, except that it's
Meaningless.
not meaningless because people use it to make meaning about whether they're good mothers or legitimate
Right.
mothers or
It
what their
creates a
births
stigma.
were. Exactly. I like want to do some kind of project where I just get all of these seemingly meaningless forms and be like, yeah, well, when they accumulate, they have great meaning. And
everyone-
they mean C-sections are not real births, which is ridiculous.
Everyone look at your forms and send us
Yes.
snapshots, please.
Please. I think that'd be amazing.
I have to ask, did you even fill it out? I would have been like, I'm not answering this.
Well, it's like also one of those radial buttons, so you can't even type in, like, here's why this bothers me.
Right.
Like, I didn't have a
I'd like to submit a
natural birth.
complaint.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, this discussion has been honestly so enlightening. And hearing your story, I'm so appreciative that you are so willing and so honest and
Thank
so
you.
raw with your experience, because as we all know, when we talk about things that were very upsetting in our life, you are putting yourself out there in a way that is really commendable. And I thank you
Thank you.
for using your voice and writing a book to help others. And
Thank you.
that's the mission I think that we're all on, is if we just keep using our voices as women, we are going to keep a movement forward to being better to women, to providing better for women, and ultimately this next generation of girls. If that's the one thing Jen and I want so badly, it's like our girls will have something different ahead of them.
Absolutely. Oh, first of all, thank you so much. And I've really also enjoyed the conversation. And I'm with you so much. I mean, it's like the small steps to make progress. And silence is not the way to make progress.
100%.
Speaking out is the way.
Speak out always.
Always.
Share your stories, share your voice. And that's how we make sure we keep moving forward. And history is so important to understand. It's just so important because this is what we learn from. We make sure history doesn't repeat itself.
Exactly.
Yes. So I always like to wrap up with like a little something special for Jen, but today's for you. I have a little mantra that I put together for you.
Oh, thank you.
If you're open to that, I would love for
Absolutely.
you to
Yeah.
close your eyes, put your hands in a comfortable way, and just repeat after me. I carry strength.
I carry strength.
I welcome healing.
I welcome healing.
I am not broken.
I am not broken.
My story is sacred.
My story is sacred.
My healing is real.
My healing is real.
I am whole even in my wounds.
I am whole even in my wounds.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you. What a beautiful mantra.
I feel like we could continue talking for
Maybe you have some
Another
more
time.
I
back.
need you back.
That'd be great.
Honestly.
Yes.
I
Really
mean,
appreciate the
There are so
conversation.
few resources. This is one of the reasons we started the podcast is
Yes.
how many things are really dedicated to C-sections, whether it's education, books, I don't know, you name it. There are so few things. We were just talking the other day about exercise, prenatal, postnatal exercise. Where's the one that's for the C-section moms?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
we need stuff that's a large chunk of us. And no matter the situation, we know they come in all different flavors.
Yes.
But whoever it is, if this is where you land, we need the resources, we need the knowledge. And so, yes, thank you for contributing to that.
Thank you. Oh,
Thank
I'm
you for
so
being
passionate about that.
here.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so
we'll-
much for the work you do.
Yes,
Thank
we'll
you.
see everybody next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.